They laughed when the humans stepped onto the combat floor. Not loudly. Not openly. Just the quiet kind of laughter that came from certainty. The kind that said the outcome was already decided. Betting odds were calculated, medical teams subtly repositioned, and training drones quietly adjusted their prediction models toward a fast conclusion. No one expected history. They expected cleanup. Because in a galaxy full of monsters, humans were supposed to be background noise. The Interstellar Combat Institute housed cadets from 26 sentient species, and only one of them came from a death world without natural weapons. Mantics had armor that turned plasma into sparks. Quilix rebuilt themselves mid-fight. Oxythe perceived time itself as flexible, reacting before danger fully existed. Every species present was a walking argument for survival through specialization. And then there were humans. Mara Hale stood on the upper observation deck, hands resting on the railing as she watched the training hall below come alive. Her reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass. Average height, soft skin, no claws, no plates, no visible adaptations for war. In a room filled with apex predators, she looked like she'd wandered into the wrong evolutionary bracket. "You think today's the day we break our losing streak?" asked Tick, his crystalline body refracting the overhead lights into fractured color. His voice hummed through a translation collar strapped around his angular core. Mara exhaled through her nose. "When has the universe ever made things easy for humans?" Below them, Instructor Korvek finished what he called stretching, though it involved cracking reinforced plating and striking the floor hard enough to trigger vibration warnings. He was Mantic, 8 feet tall, 4 arms, eyes that never blinked and missed nothing. Stories followed him like gravity. Boarding parties dismantled. Veteran warriors folded in seconds. Cadets who learned humility the hard way. "All cadets to the floor," Korvek announced, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade through atmosphere. "Today we remove your excuses." Mara felt Tick vibrate beside her. That sentence alone should be illegal. They joined the others, stepping into a formation that looked less like a class and more like a museum exhibit of galactic lethality. Scaled bodies, multi-limbed silhouettes, eyes glowing in spectrums Mara couldn't see. She stood among them knowing exactly how out of place she looked. "Today," Korvek continued, "you fight without weapons, without armor, without advantages beyond what evolution gifted you." His compound gaze swept the room, pausing, just briefly, on Mara. "I will face each of you. Full contact. Adjusted force. My goal is not to kill you." His mandibles clicked. "It is to educate you." One by one, the strongest fell. A 6-limbed aquatic fighter lasted 3 seconds. A quadrupedal bruiser made it 8. Tick tried to shift his density mid-strike, and was gently caught before he shattered across the mat. Each cadet walked away slower, quieter, humbled. Mara's pulse climbed, but her mind stayed clear. She'd learned early that panic wasted energy. Humans survived by managing resources: breath, stamina, focus. Still, something tight coiled beneath her ribs as she watched the pattern repeat. "Hail. Human." The room leaned in. She stepped forward, boots echoing too loudly in the silence. Up close, Korvek was immense. His eyes reflected her back in dozens of tiny fragments, each one showing the same thing: a soft mammal standing where it didn't belong. "Fascinating species," he said calmly. "No armor. No natural weapons. Average strength. Average speed. The Council debated your inclusion for years." Mara raised her hands into a practiced guard. "Guess I should thank them. Show me why you're here." He moved. Not full speed. Not lethal. But fast enough that the air displaced before his arm did. A strike meant to test, not finish. Mara didn't think. She moved. Her body reacted before her thoughts caught up, deflecting, pivoting, countering toward a joint she'd studied but never believed she'd reach in time. Korvek blocked, surprise flickering through his posture. Again. Faster. The world narrowed. Sound sharpened. Movement simplified. Strike, block, adjust. Somewhere deep inside her, something old and patient stirred. Not fear, not rage, but a cold, efficient focus that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with survival. Alarms began to sound. Mara didn't hear them. She was no longer measuring success. She was measuring the next 3 seconds. And the galaxy was about to realize it had misunderstood humans completely. The first thing everyone noticed was that the humans stopped blinking. It wasn't dramatic. No roar. No sudden explosion of strength. Just a subtle stillness that settled over Mara's face as her pupils adjusted in a pattern that had nothing to do with the lighting. Her breathing changed too, short, controlled draws through the nose, long measured releases through the mouth. Efficient. Mechanical. Instructor Korvek noticed it immediately. Interesting, he thought, and increased his speed. The next strike should have landed. It was mathematically sound, executed at a velocity that outpaced baseline human reaction time by a comfortable margin. The training database already predicted the outcome. Partial deflection, loss of balance, controlled takedown. Instead, Mara slipped inside the arc of his arm. Not by planning it. Not by choosing it. Her body simply occupied the space it needed to be in, as if it had known the strike was coming before Korvek fully committed to it. Her hand found the seam between 2 armored plates and applied pressure, not enough to injure, but enough to disrupt. Korvek took half a step back. The hall went silent. Monitoring equipment spiked. Medical readouts began flashing warnings that hadn't been calibrated for humans doing whatever this was. Reaction times compressed. Neural activity surged past documented baselines. "What is she doing?" someone whispered from the observation deck. "No," a Pixani medic muttered, frills tightening. "The question is, what is her body doing without her permission?" Korvek adjusted again, pushing harder, faster. 60%. Mara matched him. Her movements weren't stronger. They weren't faster in a conventional sense. They were cleaner. Waste vanished. Hesitation disappeared. Every action flowed directly into the next, as if her muscles had stopped waiting for instructions and started writing their own. The sensation was distant. Mara was aware of herself the way one was aware of a passing thought. She could feel her limbs move, feel impacts shudder through her bones, but the fear was gone. The doubt was gone. Even curiosity faded. There was only assessment. Threat incoming. Angle detected. Counter viable. Execute. Her hand redirected one strike while her body rotated beneath another. She felt cartilage protest, but not tear. Joints flexed beyond what she'd ever managed in training and then stabilized, reinforced by tension patterns she'd never consciously learned. Korvek's mandibles clicked rapidly. Not anger. Recognition. He'd seen this before. Not in humans, not exactly, but in species pushed to extinction edges. The kind that evolved not to dominate, but to endure. To survive long enough for the enemy to make a mistake. 70%, he announced. Mara kept pace. Her heart rate spiked sharply, then settled into a steady rhythm that made no biological sense. Oxygen cycled with ruthless efficiency. Lactic acid buildup stalled. Pain signals rerouted, muted, not ignored, just deprioritized. She wasn't stronger than Korvek. She was harder to kill. "That's impossible," a voice shouted from above. "Those synaptic speeds don't match human parameters." Mara heard it like sound underwater. Irrelevant data. No threat. Korvek struck high with one arm, low with another, a pattern designed to overwhelm multi-limbed species. Mara intercepted one, evaded the second, and used the third limb's momentum to shift her center of mass and drive a counter into his thorax. The impact echoed. Korvek absorbed it, but his stance shifted, defensive now. That was when the room understood. The human wasn't losing. She wasn't winning either. But she was still there, still adapting, still responding to a creature who had ended dozens of fights in seconds. Betting pools went quiet. Medical teams stopped debating and started preparing. 80%, Korvek said softly. The alarm screamed. Mara's pupils contracted to pinpoints, then widened again. Her awareness tunneled. She no longer processed the whole room, only what mattered. Korvek's center mass, limb orientation, micro-pauses between transitions. Her body learned his rhythm in real time. Not consciously. Directly. Strike patterns mapped themselves into muscle memory faster than thought could follow. When he changed tactics, her responses adjusted instantly, like a system updating its parameters mid-execution. She's not reacting. Tick's translation collar buzzed frantically. She's predicting. Korvek drove forward with all 4 arms, a coordinated assault that had broken veteran warriors. 3 strikes were intercepted. The 4th missed by millimeters as Mara twisted through a gap that shouldn't have existed. Her follow-up came automatically, targeting a fleeting vulnerability between armor plate. Enough. Korvek dropped his stance and raised his arms in the universal signal to stop. Mara didn't. Her body was still running the equation, still operating under the assumption that stopping equaled death. Her hand moved toward his neck joint, fingers tightening. Korvek caught her wrist. Firm. Controlled. Gentle. "Cadet," he said sharply. "The match is over." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Tick's voice cut through, resonant and familiar. "Mara. You're safe." Her pupils flickered. Her breath stuttered. The world rushed back in all at once. Noise, light, pain, exhaustion. Her legs gave out. Korvek caught her before she hit the mat, lowering her carefully as medical teams rushed in. The alarms faded, replaced by the quieter, more unsettling sound of data being recorded. The galaxy had just witnessed something it didn't have a category for. And Mara's last clear thought before darkness claimed her was simple and terrified. What did I just become? The medical bay smelled sharp and sterile, layered with the quiet tension that came from treating a patient whose biology refused to behave. Machines hummed around Mara, projecting shifting holograms of data that made no sense to the assembled staff. Heart rate normalizing. Oxygen saturation optimal. Neural activity anomalous. Mara woke slowly, awareness returning in fragments. First the ache, deep, full-body soreness like she'd been folded in half and reassembled incorrectly. Then the sound of monitors. Then voices, deliberately calm and failing. She opened her eyes. 3 unfamiliar faces snapped into focus, each belonging to a different species, each wearing the same expression of professional alarm. At the center stood Dr. Enrix, a Pixani medic whose skin shifted from muted green to anxious yellow the moment he noticed she was conscious. "Do not sit up," he said immediately. "I wasn't planning to," Mara croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "Feels like I lost a fight with a cargo hauler." Enrix's middle eye narrowed. From a medical standpoint, that would have been simpler. Memories came back in flashes. The mat. Korvek. The way time had broken into pieces. The strange absence of fear. "What happened?" she asked. Enrix hesitated, then gestured, pulling several displays closer. "During your match, your neural processing speed exceeded documented human limits by a significant margin. Reaction time, threat prediction, autonomic regulation, all operating outside known baselines. That's not possible." That was our initial conclusion as well. She tried to move her fingers. They responded immediately, steady and precise. That somehow unsettled her more than if they hadn't. "I wasn't thinking," she said slowly. "I was there, but not in charge." Enrix's skin rippled, shifting toward purple. Fascination. "Describe it." It felt like my brain shut off the parts that hesitate. No debate. No fear. Just, solve the problem in front of me. "Threat detection loop," Enrix murmured, fingers dancing across controls. "Your endocrine system released compounds we do not have names for yet. Not synthetic. Not artificial. Endogenous. So I broke myself." "No," Enrix said carefully. "You accessed something." The door slid open, and the room's atmosphere changed instantly. Instructor Korvek entered, his massive frame ducking under the threshold. Behind him hovered Tick, vibrating so intensely his crystalline structure blurred. "She's awake," Tick announced unnecessarily. "You look dead. Statistically very dead." Mara managed a weak smile. "Good to know my dramatic flair is intact." Korvek stepped closer, his compound eyes studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You frightened my medical staff," he said. "That makes two of us." "You did not win," he continued. "I noticed. But you did not lose. And that was never supposed to be possible." Enrix pulled up genetic data, strands of code rotating slowly in the air. "We contacted the Human Medical Directorate on Earth. Shared your readings." Mara blinked. "That feels like something I should have consented to." "They responded in 6 minutes," Enrix said. "Which is, apparently, very fast for humans. And they confirmed the pathways are real. Documented in theory. Never observed in a live subject." Mara's stomach tightened. "Observed doing what?" "Activating an emergency override," Korvek said. "A system that shifts control away from conscious thought when reaction speed becomes critical." "That sounds like a malfunction." Korvek's mandibles clicked softly. "It is not. It is elegant." Enrix nodded. "Your species evolved as endurance predators. Planning, persistence, efficiency. But evolution also prepared you for when planning fails. When something larger, faster, and stronger decides you are prey. So my brain panics and shuts down." "No," Enrix corrected. "Your brain reallocates. Higher cognition is temporarily bypassed, not disabled. Pattern recognition, spatial analysis, threat modeling, all redirected toward immediate survival." Mara stared at the ceiling. "So I turn into a walking reflex." "An autonomous defensive system," Korvek said. "Powered by millions of years of refusing to die." Tick's voice dropped. "Does every human have this?" Enrix pulled up additional files. "We ran passive scans on the other human personnel aboard this station. Different ages, different fitness levels. All share the same dormant pathways." Mara closed her eyes. "You're telling me," she said quietly, "that any human could do what I did." "With sufficient trigger conditions," Enrix confirmed. Silence settled over the room, heavy and uncomfortable. The door opened again. This time, the newcomer carried authority like a weapon. Council Overseer Valeth entered, wings folding tight against a sleek avian frame. His eyes fixed on Mara, sharp and assessing. "I have reviewed the incident," Valeth said coldly. "This appears to be undisclosed biological enhancement." "No," Enrix snapped, skin flashing red. "Baseline human biology." "That classification is outdated," Korvek said evenly. "I fought her. There was no enhancement. Only adaptation." Valetha's feathers ruffled. "If humans possess this capability naturally, then every threat assessment we have is wrong." "Yes," Korvek agreed. "That is the uncomfortable truth." Valeth turned to Mara. "Do you understand the implications of what you are?" Mara swallowed. "I didn't choose this." "No species chooses its instincts," Korvek said. "They inherit them." Valeth exhaled sharply. "The Council will convene. This information may need to be restricted." "Too late," Tick said quietly. "The footage is already circulating." Valetha's wings stiffened. Fear, Mara realized, looked the same on every species. As the Overseer left, the room felt smaller, heavier. Korvek looked down at her, something like respect in his posture. "The galaxy believed humans were harmless," he said. "Now it knows you carry something dangerous." Mara stared at her hands, still trembling slightly. "I don't feel dangerous. That is what concerns them most." She lay back, exhaustion pulling at her consciousness, one thought echoing louder than the rest. If that thing inside her woke up again, would she be able to stop it? When Mara returned to active rotation 5 days later, the Institute felt different. Not louder. Not hostile. Just watchful. She noticed it the moment she stepped into Training Hall 12. Conversations paused when she passed. Multiple eyes, thermal, compound, spectral, tracked her movements with open curiosity and something closer to caution. Species that once brushed past her now gave space. Even the floor drones adjusted their paths to avoid her. Tick hovered at her side, vibrating softly. You are statistically the most observed individual on this station. That's comforting, Mara muttered. It is not meant to be. The footage had spread faster than anyone could contain it. Frame-by-frame breakdowns, slow-motion analysis, heated debates across 17 networks about whether humans should be reclassified as potential combat threat. The word sleeper species appeared more than once, and Mara hated it. She didn't feel like a weapon. She felt like someone who'd briefly lost control and scared everyone, including herself. All cadets, line up. Instructor Korvek's voice cut through the hall, firm and grounding. He moved with the same lethal calm as always, but when his gaze met Mara's, it lingered. Not predatory, not skeptical. Evaluative. Today's focus is controlled response, he continued. Escalation without awareness is failure. Power without discipline is a liability. A few cadets shifted uneasily. Everyone knew who that was aimed at. Korvek gestured. Hail. You'll demonstrate. A ripple went through the formation. Mara stepped forward, pulse quickening. She could feel it now, that pressure behind her eyes, that waiting sensation. The reflex hadn't vanished. It hadn't been removed or suppressed. It was still there, patient and coiled like a system on standby. How are you feeling? Korvek asked quietly. Like everyone's expecting me to snap. He clicked his mandibles once. Do not give them what they expect. He dropped into a ready stance and attacked. Not fast enough to force the reflex. Not slow enough to be comfortable. A precise middle ground designed to test restraint. Mara blocked. Consciously. Her movements were slower than before. Human speed. She felt the difference immediately. Every strike required thought, adjustment, decision. It was exhausting in a way the reflex hadn't been. That thing had been efficient. This was work. Korvek pressed her, increasing pressure in careful increment. She adapted, staying just below the threshold. The reflex tugged at her awareness, urging release, promising ease. She refused it. Her heart rate climbed but didn't spike. Her breathing stayed controlled. When Korvek finally disengaged, 30 seconds later, he stepped back. Better, he said. Relief washed through her so strongly her knees almost buckled. Power without control is chaos, Korvek said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But control without access to power is predictability. Every species here has advantages. Training exists to teach you when to use them. A scaled cadet spoke up, tail flicking nervously. What if she loses control again? Then I stop her, Korvek replied simply. The same way I stop any cadet whose instincts exceed their discipline. The answer didn't eliminate fear, but it grounded it. Training resumed. Pair drills. Rotations. Normality stitched together with effort. Mara was paired with Tick, who immediately increased his density by a nervous margin. Please do not access your emergency murder mode, his caller translated. I'm not planning to, she said dryly. They sparred carefully. Mara kept herself present, forcing every movement through conscious thought. The reflex hovered, always ready, but she kept it leashed. It felt like holding back a current with bare hands. After the session, Korvek called her aside. You fear it, he observed. Yes. Good. Fear of your own capabilities keeps you honest. Overconfidence gets warriors killed. He studied her, compound eyes reflecting her tired expression. The Council will watch your species closely now. Some will fear humans. Others will want to study you. Most will quietly adjust their calculations. And you? I train warriors, Korvek said. Whether their weapons are visible or buried in their nervous system makes no difference to me. Mara nodded, exhaustion settling into her bones. Not the crushing neural burnout from before, but honest fatigue earned the normal way. That night, alone in her quarters, she sat on the edge of her bunk and flexed her hands. They looked the same, felt the same, but she knew better now. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't harmless. And she wasn't a monster either. She was human. A species that had learned how to survive long before it learned how to be safe. Somewhere inside her, the reflex waited, not as a curse, not as a gift, but as a tool. One she would have to learn to live with. And the galaxy would have to learn to live with humanity. The council chamber had never been quiet like this. Dozens of species filled the tiers, their forms arranged according to diplomatic protocol rather than comfort. Wings folded tight, limbs tucked in, eyes focused forward, though many of them kept drifting, again and again, toward the lone human standing at the center of the floor. Mara felt smaller than she ever had. Not weak, just exposed. She stood with her hands relaxed at her sides, posture neutral, the way Earth diplomats had trained her to stand when power dynamics were uncertain. No aggression, no submission, just presence. Council Overseer Valatha's voice carried through the chamber. Cadet Mara Hale of Terra, you have been asked here not as a soldier, but as evidence. That word landed hard. Mara kept her expression steady. I didn't ask to represent my entire species. No species ever does, Valath replied. History assigns that burden. Holographic projections ignited around the chamber, footage from the training hall slowed and annotated. Vectors, probability trees, threat response overlays. The same moment replayed again and again. The instant Mara stopped thinking and started surviving. A reptilian delegate hissed softly. Your people concealed this capability. We didn't conceal it, Mara said evenly. We didn't know how to access it safely. Most humans never do. A murmur spread. An avian elder leaned forward. But it exists in all of you. Yes, Mara said. Just like fear. Or adrenaline. Or the instinct to pull your hand away from fire. Valatha's gaze sharpened. Except this instinct allows you to engage apex combatants without augmentation. Mara inhaled slowly. It allows us to not die when something stronger decides we should. Silence followed. Then Korvek spoke from the observer tier, his voice carrying weight without effort. I have trained warriors for 3 decades. I have seen engineered super soldiers, hive minds, temporal predictors. What the human demonstrated was none of those. He paused. It was refusal. Eyes turned toward him. Refusal to freeze. Refusal to surrender. Refusal to accept extinction as an outcome, he continued. That is not aggression. That is survival. Valath folded his wings. Survival instincts on that scale destabilize balance. So does underestimating a species, Korvek replied. Mara felt the reflex stir faintly, not triggered, not active, just aware. She ignored it, grounding herself in the room, the weight of gravity, the steady rhythm of her breath. Humans are not asking for special status, she said. We're asking not to be feared for something we didn't invent. We didn't engineer this. We grew up with it, the same way you grew claws or armor or flight. A low, thoughtful hum spread through the chamber. Valath studied her for a long moment. If conflict were to arise, he asked carefully, could your people control this response? Mara didn't answer immediately. No, she said honestly. Not perfectly. Just like any species under existential threat. But we're very good at learning. At building rules around dangerous things. We did it with fire. With weapons. With ourselves. That honesty shifted something. The chamber no longer felt like a tribunal. It felt like a calculation being revised. After what felt like hours, Valath straightened. The Council will amend human classification. Not as a threat species, but as a resilient species. A wave of reaction followed, surprise, discomfort, reluctant acceptance. Humans will not be restricted, Valath continued. But neither will they be underestimated again. The session adjourned soon after. Back at the Institute, life slowly resumed its rhythm. Cadets trained. Instructors taught. The whispers faded into background noise. Mara returned to her routine, to sweat and bruises earned the normal way. She still felt the reflex sometimes, watching from the edges of her awareness. But it no longer frightened her. Weeks later, during a mixed-species exercise, a systems failure trapped a squad inside a collapsing section of the station. Panic spread fast. Too fast. Mara felt the shift begin. This time, she didn't resist it. She guided it. Her voice cut through the chaos, clear and calm. Orders followed instinct. Movements synchronized. The squad escaped with seconds to spare. Afterward, no alarms screamed. No medics rushed in. Korvek met her gaze and nodded once. That night, Mara stood at the viewport, stars stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Humanity's home was a distant point of light now, but its shadow reached much farther than anyone had realized. Humans weren't monsters. They weren't myths. They were survivors. And the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. Do you want any adjustments, tone changes, or image prompts next, or should we refine this ending further?